Do the Philadelphia Eagles offense or defense have more pressure heading into this Monday night battle with the Atlanta Falcons? We'll get into that and more on this Friday edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Friday edition of the show. I'm Louis DiBiase, joined as always by Gino Camilleri, and we're brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions do apply. Eagles-Falcons Monday Night Football. The Eagles trying to get to 2-0 on Nick Foles' night after a big shootout win over the Green Bay Packers last Friday in Brazil. And Gino, again, an up and down game that we've gotten a lot into. I think we'd both agree with most of the sentiment from that game. That, of course, it was very encouraging to see them overcome a lot of the obstacles that would have crushed them a year ago. But at the same time, you can't get by doing 2023 things and think that it's going to be sustainable, where you have to overcome self-inflicted mistakes and win one-score games every single week, sometimes by comeback nature. Like, that's just not sustainable. They have to have more convincing wins. It's crazy. I actually saw a tweet that said, and I believe this is correct, the Eagles have not had a multi-score win since last year against the Miami Dolphins on Sunday Night Football. Like, we need some more 2022 in our lives. But I will say, at the same time, from the defense's perspective, I was heading into this season with expectations that it was going to be an up and down season. There was going to be some high highs, but also some pretty low lows, like not to the 2023 standpoint where they just look abysmal, but they're so young and so new with a new coach and a lot of new starters on all three levels that there were going to be growing pains. So I'm not expecting this defense to look right away like the 2022 defense. But from an offensive perspective, like, absolutely, we need some more convincing, not perfect wins, but smoother than we've gotten even in 30-plus point performances like last week.
Especially, I hate going back to last year. I continue to go back, but you have to go back because you have to look at the lessons that you learned, and the lessons that we learned in those first 11 weeks of the season. And at the time, we were probably a little blinded to it, but people would ask us, like, are you concerned about those close victories for the Philadelphia Eagles?
Exactly.
And I, for the longest time, gave them the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, no, that's a learned skill. Like, you learn to win those one-possession games. But then we saw down the stretch exactly how concerning those things were in the beginning of the year and how they could haunt you through the rest of the season. And I think that's how you have to approach, especially this week, Lou, because this Atlanta Falcons team, Kirk Cousins, he potentially could be out for the season if an injury goes one way or another for him. It looks like he can't even plant off of his one foot to drive the football. This isn't a Green Bay Packers team that people were talking about potentially competing for an NFC championship. I was walking around my house today and cycling through Twitter, siphoning through Twitter as well. And I was thinking they need to get back to 2017. That stretch, Lou, where they go Chicago, they go San Fran, they go Denver, and they just kick the ever-living, whatever you want to say.
Well, that's what they did in 2022, Gino, like that Steelers run.
Killing teams.
Yeah, they were playing the Steelers and the Texans and the Giants, and they were crushing teams 2 years ago. Like, I saw a lot of people discussing that because there was a lot of positives to take away from that win on Friday. But at the same time, like you're saying, it was very early 2023 where are we giving them, some people are asking the question, are we giving them too much of the benefit of the doubt like we did last year? Does it need to be smoother? I think it's not black and white. It's yes and no. Like, obviously, there's a lot of positives from that win. But yeah, from an offensive standpoint, they've got to, even though they scored 34 points, they have to clean it up. There's not the same excuses for the offense that there is for the defense. This offense is established. They have stars, veterans, high-end top 10 paid players at almost every single spot. So I'm not expecting a 2022 like run week in and week out from this defense. And I'm not saying the offense will, like 2022 seasons don't come around often, even for a Kansas City Chiefs, New England Patriots dynasty type of team. Like that happens every few years. A lot of the times when you have a first place or second place schedule, it's a lot more difficult. So I'm not saying the Eagles have to have a 2022 like performance every single week, but from the offensive standpoint, like absolutely things need to be a lot smoother than they've been the last 2 years.
I really like to bring up 2017 because that season had insanely high highs and then had moments of adversity where they had to prove that they were the kings of the hill. I go back to that Thursday night football matchup against the Carolina Panthers, Lou, where the Eagles, they were 4-1 at the time, I believe. Yeah. And people were saying, is this team for real? Are they a team that they just might benefit from this last place schedule after the season they had in 2016? They go into that Carolina environment and they win a scrappy football game. But then a couple weeks go by, and when things started to click, it was just like they were going down the Autobahn in Germany and there's not another car on the road, and they could have went as fast as they wanted to, and they were going to knock anybody off the road that came in their way. They have to get back to that. But 2017, was it perfect? 2022, was it perfect? You can't just skate by and have no adversity at all. That's week one. It's like,
no, I agree.
Guys to have that early on,
especially against Green Bay, yeah, of course you're gonna that's why I'm not saying
it's not
Friday
like last year.
That's why I'm not saying Friday wasn't good enough and here we go again. But at the same time, like, I don't think this defense is going to be able to carry you where you're winning because of that unit like you were 2 years ago. So the offense, they are pretty much the main reason you won with 34 points. Give the defense some credit with all those red zone stands. But for the most part, it was a shootout that the offense won. But the offense can't be asking this defense that many times to bail them out, especially their own zone, if they're going to have any 2017, 2022 like runs this year. So I do think the leash, of course, is longer for the defense this year than the offense. So people are asking this like black and white question of, is it good enough if they keep winning the way they did? No. But I think for the defense, I'm not expecting them to be a top 5 unit this year. They're so young and new that there's going to be high highs, but there's going to be low lows for sure. I'm not expecting them to be perfect.
Even if you're an average, let's say, of 2022 and 2023, that's still an increase over the defense that you put out.
Which is, I think, that's where they'll land. I think they'll be somewhere in that middle.
And I get why people can be jaded to the discussion, because if you look at the Eagles, like their best seasons ever come at the hands of defenses that are just like all world, right? I mean, it goes hand in hand. Jim Johnson, you look at the Buddy Ryan years when they had that defensive front, like teams couldn't do anything against them. That's what 2022 was. You had 85 Bears like sack number. That comes like once a decade. Like, you can't look at that defense and say this is what the expectation has to be. That's an outlier season. That's what you have to get out of your head. But so was last year. The last half of last year was a negative outlier. You have to find the middle in that.
There will be games they win because of this defense. There will be games where this defense dominates. If they go in on Monday night, Gino, and just kick the crap out of Kirk Cousins, I wouldn't be surprised at all. It's just it's going to be fewer and far between than 2022. But like you said, they're going to have, last year the defense didn't win you maybe a single game.
No, they didn't win you any games at all, man. So that's a fact. And when you look at it, what the defense also is going to have to do is provide this offense with some really good field position, win the turnover battle in some games, and they're not always going to be backed up and have to hold a team to 2 field goals on the first 2 drives of the game. Like, that's not going to happen. But at the same time, I don't think that second half of what you saw last week was a crazy outlier for what this defense is going to be. I think they played a really good first half, but they were on the field a lot, and you eventually get worn down as a defense. But if, like I said, if you are an average of the last 2 seasons of the Philadelphia Eagles defense, which, that's a top 3rd defense, top 15 defense in the league, that's enough to win, because your investment is on the offensive side of the ball. You haven't invested these huge contracts on defense yet, where the expectation is the defense wins you games. The expectation is the offense is going to carry this team, and the defense has to do just enough for this team to get by. But with better personnel, a better coaching staff, I think, like you said, there will be games, unlike last year, where Matt Patricia and Sean Desai, they didn't carry their end of the bargain. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Brian Johnson didn't either, but for the most part, the defense didn't have a Jalen Hurts and an AJ Brown and a DeVonta Smith to bail you out.
And it's not like this offense has been far away last year or this year. They're still producing like yardage, touchdown wise at the same clip as 2022. They're just making far more mistakes, Gino. And that's like the biggest part is the offense cleaning up the self-inflicted wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the leash is a little bit different. And I think both sides are going to bounce back and look really good on Monday night against the Atlanta Falcons. We'll put our money where our mouth is coming up next, though. LOE3 presented by FanDuel coming up right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find the quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They have the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. They're not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional through LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. To post your job for free, terms and conditions do apply. Guys, we're also sponsored by America's #1 sportsbook and the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's FanDuel. We've got something a little bit different for you, though, through FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and you're going to get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So just follow along Gino and I's LOE3 today. Make those bets. You're going to get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket with a YouTube TV base plan. You'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. And if that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use it for FanDuel's Double Your Winnings for all of Sunday, September 15th. Pre-game moneyline bets. Profit Boost will be live starting, actually, this was Thursday on the 12th. View your account page now to learn more about your boost. Just visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, of course, you got to make your second listen the new Locked On NFL podcast, which is 2 shows every day. First, you've got the Madman Tyler Rowland kicking things off in the morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop with our guy Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in our Locked On experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in just 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the Madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, it's time for LOE3 presented by FanDuel. Gino and I have 3 player prop bets each to bet on for Eagles Falcons. Gino, I did not do very hot against the Packers. I went bold, and I went 0-3. But you did help out our listeners and viewers. You got the 2-1, so props to you. I'm going to try to bounce back this week for sure.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly.
As always, use FanDuel responsibly. Bet within your limits. Doesn't matter what you bet as long as you are betting with FanDuel. But Lou, this marathon that we are in with the last 3 years of LOE3, you just have to ride the waves. You take the good with the bad. Eventually things come around.
This wave threw us into the beach, man.
Ooh. Yeah, we got hit pretty hard. We were just hanging out. We had a drink in hand, and all of a sudden our phone's in the water, our hat's gone, our sunglasses are missing. But that's all right. I helped out a little bit.
No, you did. You went 2-1. You nailed those. I went bold. I went with the Dotson anytime touchdown. Maybe that was a week too soon or a few weeks too soon. Mm-hmm. I took the parlay of the over on Goedert and Saquon receiving yards. That hit with Barkley, but Goedert wasn't involved as much because, again, Barkley, DeVonta, and AJ were just completely dominating. So I went with the big 3 yet again, though, through the air. This time, not Saquon, but I did go with a Dallas Goedert bet, DeVonta Smith and AJ Brown. You went with a Saquon bet, Hurts and AJ Brown. We'll start with our 2 AJ bets. You took the over on 26.5 yards being his longest reception, which, Gino, I love this bet. Of course, Brown's one of the best deep threats in football, especially in single coverage. You saw that deep 60-plus yard touchdown against Jair Alexander. But also, if you watch back that Steelers-Falcons game, it didn't look like the Steelers did much on offense, but one thing they did was stretch the ball vertically to George Pickens on AJ Terrell. And A.J. Brown, George Pickens, Brown's a much better player, but stylistically, very similar. Big guys that can win downfield. I really like that bet from you.
You kept pushing that point from the film that, like, look at George Pickens.
It was the only thing they did well on that side of the ball.
So. And it's like, if I'm going to put my money on somebody to make a play downfield,
it's Brown.
I wasn't expecting him last week to have that big of a play, Lou. That kind of came open because you got him the ball in space. He was able to run free. But I think Atlanta's going to give you a lot more opportunities to get that ball downfield. They don't have as much depth in terms of corner talent.
Agreed.
But the thing you got to worry about is try to throw AJ open away from those two safeties. But at the same time, you have to cover Devontae. You have to worry about Saquon Barkley. You have to worry about Dallas Goedert. 26.5 yards, Lou. I think he's going to get at least one or two opportunities on 50-50 balls that could be 30-plus yards. And then he's also going to get opportunities just in the quick passing game where he's going to get the ball in space and could do exactly what he did last week.
Completely agree. My A.J. Brown bet is he's going to have at least 25 receiving yards in each half. I just think they're going to consistently get him the football here, Gino. I know they have DeVonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley, a lot of mouths to feed. But I like this matchup a lot for AJ. I think they're going to use him more. Like, again, I loved what they did last week where you saw him used in many different ways, a lot more over the middle of the field. I just think he's going to be consistent this game, and 25 yards in each half, I think he's going to go for over 50 yards in this game. I think he'll probably go over 70. Maybe he'll get to 100 again. And I think that's pretty realistic to say he gets at least 25 in both halves, and that's at a plus 105 odd.
I love the plus 105.
Yeah, that was the thing too.
You're kind of buying his over receptions number down.
Like get him that one reception that you're betting on, and then a few others to close out the game. And I think I already got there.
And I believe FanDuel had him close to what they had him at last week, which is around 74.5 yards.
Yep, so 74.5.
In essence, you're buying down those minus 114 odds of the over at 75.5 to around over a 50, and you're getting better odds. You just got to hope he breaks it up. But that's the thing with a guy like AJ Lou. That could happen on two plays in each half. Like that could be two catches where he does exactly the same thing. Let's say in the first half, they get a nice little motion that frees him up in the slot and they could take advantage of bumping him off of AJ Terrell. Kellen Moore sees that and he's like, we're going to go back to this play in the second half because Kellen Moore, he loves to build off of those similar structures through games and through weeks. So I think you're going to see only more opportunities for AJ to get the ball.
All right, our second bets, you have a Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown, and then also it's a parlay, right, of the Eagles' money line, plus 130. I like this a lot. The Eagles are favored by 6.5 right now, according to FanDuel, and you should have had this last week if Cam Jurgens and Jalen Hurts didn't botch the snap. So I think it's smart to go back to the well of Jalen getting in the end zone on his own. That normally happens. I can't see, just based on odds, Jalen going 2 weeks in a row where he doesn't have a rushing touchdown.
Exactly. Vegas is usually pretty dialed in this regard. And like you said, if it wasn't for the botched snap, I walk away 3-0 on my LOE 3 picks last week. And I think this will be a better environment, Lou, to where last week prior to that game, I said maybe you get this opportunity where Jalen, they do a nice little read play on a 3rd and short and everybody's crashing in on Saquon and he just kind of gets it and scampers. Well, maybe if they have their footing in Lincoln Financial Field, that might tend to help us out a little bit there. And I love the idea of finding ways to buy lines down, and that money line of the Eagles, like you're going from almost odds of like minus 200 and even above that to plus 130 simply if Jalen Hurts scores that touchdown. And Vegas loves him to score touchdowns because he's the #1 favorite each and every week for an anytime.
I took an anytime touchdown for DeVonta Smith at plus 190. Yeah, I feel like him and Brown kind of go every other week who scores a touchdown. It was Brown last week.
How sick was the Bad Boys picture, though?
Oh, it's my wallpaper on my phone right now, Gino.
It's unbelievable.
It's literally my wallpaper.
It's so much swag, dude. Like, I wish I could be half as cool as those two.
And I just think DeVonta Smith has a matchup of AJ Terrell. I don't know if he's going to shadow AJ Brown. If he does, DeVonta has a really nice matchup. Like there's not really a second Falcons corner. I'm like, ooh, that's an interesting, like they don't have an Eric Stokes even on that side of the ball. So I think he's going to get in the end zone. I just feel like him and Brown kind of alternate there. And I like that bet. The anytime, I like an anytime bet. And again, Dotson last week was a little bit too bold. So I'll go with number 6 today.
And if you're just going simply off of target share, if you look at the big three, the guys that each team targeted over the first week, the Eagles were in the top 3 for respective targets to DeVonta Smith, AJ Brown, and Saquon Barkley. So you're putting your eggs in a basket where you know there's going to be a lot of opportunities for him to get some play.
So you have the over on combined rushing and receiving yards for Saquon Barkley, which is at 97.5 minus 113. Saquon Barkley was the NFC Offensive Player of the Week last week, had those 2 big catches. For one was an incredible receiving touchdown, had over 100 rushing yards. And this isn't even at 100, like 97.5 scrimmage. I like that a lot.
From scrimmage.
Yeah. And if they're winning in the second half, they're going to give him the rock.
Exactly. I was looking at some anytime touchdowns and I was peeking into the third and fourth quarter. I'm like, let's see what Saquon to score in those late quarters is, because I exactly was on that line of your thinking, hey, if it's late, not even late in the game, like third quarter, you score coming out of half, Atlanta gives you the ball back. You're going to want to kind of work down that clock if you're up a possession or 2, right? And I think you hammer home AJ Brown. If he has better footing going into this game after you saw him slip on that first touch from last week, it's going to be a better opportunity to run between the tackles where they had success last week. Atlanta isn't as stacked in that regard as a team like Green Bay was. I think on some of these stretch runs, Lou, you're going to have the blocking matchups on the edge, man. Like if you get Mekhi Becton and Cam Jurgens pulling out there, like as good as Jesse Bates is and as good as Justin Simmons is, like they don't have the back 7 to make those plays like a Green Bay did last week.
I totally agree. My final bet was Dallas Goedert, the over on 34.5 receiving yards. Goedert was kind of the 4th option in that offense Friday. There's going to be a lot of weeks where that's the case, right? I think more times than not. But 34.5, like I think he'll have a couple chunk plays. I think his yards per reception will go up this week. I think there will be an added emphasis of getting him the ball in space. If he can get matchups with linebackers, Atlanta has one of their starters already banged up on the inside. So I like that over at 34.5 is a pretty easy line there at minus 114. I think that's doable. Even if he's still the 4th guy, like I'd like him to push for 40 receiving yards.
And I think one of the things that will help him, Lou, is if you go back and look at that tape from last week, there were a lot of opportunities that some of those shots downfield, Dallas Goedert just sitting, waiting for the ball wide open.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey, if you push the ball downfield and it works, good. But if you want to see live to see another day, let's say, and not make some of these stupid turnovers, let's find Dallas Goedert coming free in the middle of the field and let's see him sitting against zone. And 34.5 yards, Lou, like this guy, Dallas Goedert, needs to get the monkey off of his back in terms of like a big game. I just think for his psyche, for his overall confidence, not that he's a guy who doesn't look like he's playing with confidence, but hey, it's been a while. Like somebody who was at the top of this position for the longest time, 34.5, man, come on. Come on, DG, have a huge game.
Yeah, and it didn't even feel like he was very involved last week, and he had 4 catches for 31. Like, he only needs 5 more yards from what he did last week. Right. And I think he has a better matchup in this game. So, yeah, I'll take the over. I'm curious to see what the Falcons will do, though, Gino, if they do have Simmons, or I think they're going to want Bates roaming around. But I think maybe Simmons is on him one-on-one. I'm curious to see how they do try to defend Saquon and Goedert.
Yeah, because if you look at what Jesse Bates is, he's kind of almost like a wild card on defense. Where
you kind of want him out there baiting Hurts, right? I don't know
that's
if you want him one-on-one with
Locked On Falcons host Aaron Freeman.
I was about to ask what he said, yeah.
He's somebody that likes to play free, and he's going to play out of structure with this defense because he does like to do what you say. He likes to bait the thrower, and I think if you're smart, you probably but like throw Jesse Bates to AJ Brown's side more often than not. Give him some help in that direction. It would be smart to shadow, but at the same time, you still have to worry about Devontae. So I don't know what they're going to do, but they don't have the depth of Green Bay. That's what I keep going back to. And on offense, they might have some guys that might present issues, but as long as you take care of the ball, I think the Eagles within their game plan are going to be able to do exactly what they want to do. run the ball, set up some play action for Jalen Hurts, give him some easy completions down the middle of the field, set up those shot plays, and that's the Eagles offense. Like, hopefully they can get cooking in that regard this week.
Totals for this game from FanDuel, we've got -6.5 for the Eagles. 47.5 is the over-under. I like the Eagles to cover that. I don't know why, Gino. Like, I don't want to say I'm disrespecting Atlanta. I just really like this matchup. And from what I saw from the Falcons last week, like, it's concerning for Kirk Cousins. And
Primetime Kirk.
That's the
Look
thing
at
too.
the numbers.
Maybe that's what I'm feeling is just week 2. They just have Kirk's number, and it's Nick Foles night. Like, the vibes. I think the Eagles are just going to bounce back in a big way with better footing as well. So I'm going to take the Eagles to cover that 6.5 line, and the over-under on 47.5, I kind of like the over there.
I kind of like the under. I like the under. I don't know. Maybe
I don't
see
like a heart
Atlanta
thing.
Scoring a lot of points. Like,
no,
I
that's
think,
fair.
I think 13.
But I think the Eagles
16,
are putting up 30 plus.
Okay. So yeah. So
I think it's
that's
happening
the
again.
So if Atlanta does get 13 or 16,
and they score like
and
16
garbage,
garbage,
the floor.
Yeah,
You're right. It'd be okay. I talked myself into the over, Lou.
I just, maybe it's a heart thing. I like rooting for the over. I like rooting for points, so I like to hammer the over every time.
No clock will move slower than when you bet an under in a close
That's
game.
what I'm saying. Like, I hate that bet. So maybe it's a heart pick over a head pick, but I'm always going the over, unless it's a monsoon.
I'm with you. Let's get 41 for Nick Foles in celebration of that.
Oh, absolutely.
That would be beautiful.
All right, we'll talk a little Vic Fangio to wrap things up. Our thoughts on how he goes about his press conferences. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
And today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks, and it is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps, PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks offers you the ability to win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 picks. Want to play PrizePicks alongside Drewski, Joe Budden, MMA champ Sugar Sean O'Malley, who has a huge fight this week? You can now find the community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. And PrizePicks also invented the flex play, which means that you could still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks does not hit. We've been using PrizePicks here at the Locked On Eagles podcast forever at this point. Like we said in the last segment, Lou and I love rooting for yards, love rooting for touchdowns. We're always picking the Eagles players to go more than their PrizePicks projection. And if you want to get in on the action today, download the PrizePick app and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. And you don't even have to win, and you're going to get that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game.
All right, we're wrapping up this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Still got another show for you, though, before Eagles-Falcons on Monday Night Football. We'll have that dropping for you on Monday morning before the game. So, the Eagles wearing green and white on Nick Foles night. Love that. This is a big deal. I feel like, although they're not retiring his jersey number, I would have loved a Nick Foles patch, like, for this jersey. Like, give me a number 9 patch for everybody to wear.
Or like a patch of him and
Or
Doug.
like... Yeah, or like a
Philly.
The statue patch, or like give me a Super Bowl 52 patch or something for it. But I think maybe it's just based on vibes, but I feel really good heading into this game.
It's one of those ones where it's like our heads and our hearts telling us one thing or another. Because I'm kind of with you. I feel that the way that this team played last week, I feel much better than I did walking out of week 1 in last season. Going into an environment where you have faced Kirk Cousins on week 2 for now 3 consecutive seasons.
3 years in a row, yeah.
Every time you play him on primetime, every time he plays on primetime, it tends to be a letdown. In an environment where it'll probably be the loudest Lincoln Financial Field since the last time Nick Foles was balling out in there, I love the vibes going into this game, man. And I think Jalen Hurts, he talked in his press conference, said that he's accountable. He can't make those mistakes again. This team is moving in a good direction, and it would just be so much of a letdown to lose and have a stinker against this team. It seems like there's blood in the water for this Eagles team, and they just have to realize, like, hey, maybe we can be the apex predator if we play up to our standard. That's just what they have to get to the standard this game.
And I think it's interesting, too, when you look at the defense overall, there's some decisions that Vic Fangio has to make. Isaiah Rodgers was a full participant in practice despite the hand injury. He did have the surgery there. He might start, although Cooper DeJean said in his press conference today that he was splitting time, like playing outside corner, inside. Now he's full-time in the nickel. It's like, is Vic kind of gearing him up to be the full-time guy inside?
Who said that on these airwaves before?
Nakobe Dean officially named the starter by Fangio. Devin White doesn't sound like he's too happy, but I thought he handled it well. Do you think, because Fangio, the thing is, like, all of this is very apparent. Like, there's not many question marks about what the defense is thinking or what he's thinking. Do you think that's a good thing or bad thing? Like, as a reporter, I love the blunt honesty in his answers. Do you think that could ever bite this team, though, if things aren't going well? Because he's brutally honest about Devin White. He was about Bryce Huff at times, Zach Bond. I think it can light a fire under young players, but I do wonder if it's a case-by-case basis. Like, I like to coach each player individually.
It is,
and Vic's a guy that's like this, and I respect it in a way. It's genuinely him, but man, he can be brutal sometimes.
He's a New Jersey, Philadelphia Italian.
He's an old school coach. Man. Like, that's why I like it. But it's going to be interesting to follow that as the season goes on.
There is that tightrope that you have to walk with these kind of guys. I
agree.
Right? Because you heard after he left Miami, those players had some things to say, but maybe they could have used somebody to kick him in the rear end because they got bullied by the Buffalo Bills
on Thursday night. Oh, God,
goodness gracious. But I think in Philly, that's a type of guy that you want, man. Like,
I think it works for what the defense
needs.
Go
listen to how Jim Johnson used to talk. Yeah, go listen to him. He was a pretty straightforward guy. Buddy Ryan, a pretty straightforward guy. Like, you can't be here's everything on a silver platter. Go take your snaps. And if you don't play well, everything's all princesses and rainbows. Like, no, if you suck, sometimes you got to be told you suck. And some of these guys, I like what he does with the veterans too. Like, you don't just get to earn get a spot because you have X amount of years on your career. If you're the best player,
it's a fair point.
We're going to put you out there. And I think it would kind of be hypocritical for you and I, because we had been wanting a type of coach like this, that it's like, if you're the best player and I see it, I'm going to back you up. And as long as that tape is showing me, I'm going to continue to be in your corner. Because how many times is Howie making this decision? Is Jim Schwartz not playing this guy because he doesn't fit what Howie's did? Well, if Vic Fangio says, Howie, I really don't care what you paid this guy. Like, I don't care where you picked him. I'm going to play the best players. And it works on a results basis where their defense actually does look good. Well, how could you argue against it? And we're only 1 week into this thing, and we'll see how it responds when maybe they go on a little bit of a run where things aren't so great on the defensive side of the ball. How do you react? But to go from where you were last year, I think you needed this extreme type of change.
Yes.
Same with Kellen Moore on offense.
For the current state of the defense, absolutely, yes. This is what they need. I just, I think it's interesting, and sometimes I don't know if that'll help certain players, like a Jalen Carter when he gets really rattled. Like, is that somebody that's going to respond well to this kind of? I don't know.
He said he liked it.
He did.
Jordan
that's
Davis
true.
Did too.
That's a good point.
Those Georgia guys kind of said they did. It's kind of like that. I mean, down in Georgia, Kirby Smart's he's not kissing nobody's rear end.
I love it because
you're a 5-star.
We get answers pretty quick. Like, we know how he feels about Devin White right now and Bryce Huff, and it helps us evaluate things for sure.
Yeah, we were just like, hey, Sean Desai, will you give us any sort of insight to that defense last year? Like, how are you feeling here, bud?
There's not a lot of coach speak with the Eagles right now, and that, at least, I definitely do appreciate. Eagles-Falcons Monday Night Football coming up in just a few days. Gino and I, we will be back for one more show Monday morning, getting you ready for kickoff on Nick Foles night. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day until Monday. I'm Louis DiBiase alongside Gino Camilleri signing off. Thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.